What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking the brand new Netflix movie that's dropping in limited theaters this weekend. That is Blonde. This will be dropping on the platform in a couple of weeks. I was able to watch it, and we're going to talk about it today. Does it live up to the hype of a Marilyn Monroe movie? So based on the best-selling novel by Joyce Carol Oates, Blonde boldly reimagines the life of one of Hollywood's most enduring icons, Marilyn Monroe. From her volatile childhood as Norma Jeane through her rise to stardom and romantic entanglements, Blonde blurs the lines of fact and fiction to explore the widening split between her public and private selves. Written and directed by Andrew Dominik, this film features an excellent cast led by Ana de Armas, Bobby Cannavale, Adrien Brody, Julianne Nicholson, and many more. Starting with the rating like we always do, this one's not only an R-rated movie, this is an NC-17 rated film. So this is 100% one you don't want to watch with your kids. And it's stated for sexual content. There are a few sequences in here that are definitely not geared towards families. I would not recommend this to be a family outing. It's also a 3-hour movie almost, so it's one that feels a bit lengthy at times. It's one that you may even have to watch a little bit of it, but because there is so much in terms of the content it is showing that just takes the emotions right out of you, man. It's an emotionally exhausting film. It's a hard one to get done in one sitting. Not necessarily a knock on the quality of the movie, it's just a knock on kind of what you see as we progress. Before we get into what this movie is meant to be, I want to talk about Ana de Armas and her performance. It's a performance that I was really looking forward to. She knocked it out of the park just in the trailers that I saw, and well, I'm not entirely sure if she nailed the exact voice of Marilyn Monroe. The performance itself, the emotion that she displays, the turmoil that her character goes through in this film, consistently all throughout the movie, first, second, and third act, she is excellent. She does basically everything she needs to do with displaying everything that her character goes through. And that's really what I was looking forward to most, just to see how she would portray this character, this version of this character, and she knocks it out of the park. If there's one thing I absolutely loved about this movie, it's that, and possibly, and this isn't necessarily referring to the entirety of the movie because it was an up and down experience as a whole, but there are artistic decisions made here, whether it be cinematography, scene transitions, just moments that are visually stunning and striking, and they utilize technical elements to almost make up for shortcomings in the pacing as we were going, right? So the aspect ratio will change pretty consistently throughout the movie, and then you'll have moments in black and white where it essentially throws you back into the scene, the moment in the life of Marilyn Monroe. That was really cool. And the way that they bring those iconic scenes, the imagery to life that we will recognize, whether it be from her movies or, pictures from tabloids, all of those things, they bring it to life in a stunning way. Now, did every scene transition make sense for what the movie was trying to do? I'm not entirely sure, right? The consistent aspect ratio change, it does fit certain scenes beautifully, and I appreciated it from an artistic standpoint, but I was trying to put together in my head why it was happening in this moment, why it was going to that aspect ratio, and I just couldn't quite come up with the reason as to why. So while I love technical elements in this movie all throughout, there are other moments and within the same scene where there's a decision made, and I'm like, I just don't know if that was necessary. I'm not entirely sure if that elevated the material or it was just an artistic decision being made because it's an artistic decision. It's like, oh, let's just do that because it looks cool. Does it serve the movie? I couldn't necessarily say it did in certain parts. So that's why I feel so up and down about the visual aspect of this film. But take nothing away from the moments that are beautiful. They are beautiful. Also, the score is great, but there are scenes where there is no score, and I actually really respected that decision, allowed the dialogue and, the back and forth between the characters to stand out. And the sound design is something that I want to hit on. Authentic sounds that you'll kind of recognize from that era playing underneath the moments that we get with Marilyn. That was really cool, right? There are decisions in this film that I was just so impressed by. Now, let's talk about the source material. That's the topic of conversation. That's kind of the division between fans and audiences, people who haven't or have seen the film. And even Netflix states, Blonde boldly reimagines the life of one Hollywood's most iconic stars, boldly reimagines. This is a reimagining of the life of Marilyn Monroe. They're going that extra mile in giving her, new portions of her backstory, because this is perceived as a fictionalized character based off of a real human being. And it's a fine line that you're walking there when you're making a movie based off of the source material. I can't comment on the book. I don't know if it's awesome. I don't know if it's terrible. I've heard people say both, but I can comment on the movie that was made about the book. And there were times where it felt like, instead of, bringing empathy or something that resonated to the table, showcasing Marilyn Monroe's intelligence when there was a clear opportunity in the narrative break to do that, it was kind of exploiting, whether it be the moment or the situation or the character, just a bit. And I didn't want to feel that way, but I walked out of this movie thinking of more than a few scenes where, instead of showing us that other side of this character, they were doing what felt like the easiest thing to do in that situation. Instead of giving us a more well-rounded character. And again, they may be strictly going off the source material. That's fine. But I can't speak upon that. I can only speak upon the movie. But I did not want to feel like they were exploiting Marilyn Monroe. And it didn't feel like that throughout the entirety of the film, but I did start to get that vibe as we were going, and I didn't want that vibe. So it was a fine line to walk. They did not nail it for sure, but there were also times where that performance was coming through and she was giving us a striking moment, or even a scene where I could sit back and say, that is an Oscar-worthy scene, that's an Oscar-worthy moment. But everything surrounding her in that moment just didn't quite work for what they were trying to do. I'm trying to tiptoe around spoilers. How am I doing? There's also one moment in the third act that was just extremely difficult to watch, and I felt as if they could have cut that off just a bit sooner. Part of me understands what they were going for, but the other part of me, I had a lot of difficulty in that moment as a viewer. Maybe you'll feel the same way, maybe you won't, but this is just going off of a personal perspective. And again, this is a dark and dire movie. The emotions are just consistently just sucked out of you as you're going, because it's such a desolate outlook on the way that she lived her life, this fictional version of this character. Marilyn Monroe, well, first we get to see the childhood of Norma Jeane. Norma Jeane, who turns into Marilyn Monroe, that being kind of that fabricated Hollywood reality. But Norma Jeane looks up to her mother, and her mother is portrayed as this just terrifying figure in her life. I mean, that performance was mesmerizing, but that character it was just a scary situation, and that's something that did get me sucked into the movie at the beginning. Bobby Cannavale is excellent as the ex-athlete. That's how he's referred to in the film. And then Adrien Brody, the playwright, right? Obviously, based around the real-life figures, not utilizing the names in this movie. And that, again, is an example of something that's fictionalizing this entire situation. And that's absolutely fine. I'm okay with an artistic take. I mean, Spencer last year kind of did that, and I thought Spencer was a really great movie. But Blonde is one that takes all of these ideas and situations and tries to present it to us in a very artistic way. But when a movie approaches 3 hours and the pacing doesn't always work in its favor, and you're trying all of these different techniques, from the cinematography to the transitions, all of those elements, when they come together and just feel so up and down, back and forth, like they don't quite mesh together, people are going to look at this review, they're going to say, I didn't appreciate that. No, I just thought the movie was a bit more messy than I expected it to be. I'm okay with taking chances and taking risks, but the risk in itself has to be capitalized on by a good story and awesome direction, and I just didn't quite feel that as I was watching this film, right? I like the fact that they're going for it at all times. It's horrifying, it's tragic, it's dramatic, it's a dark, it's a desolate feeling, look into her life, and the performance that comes from that is amazing. But I wanted a little bit of hope in there. I needed something instilled in me, or at least another side of her character, a look at her intelligence, a look at what she was truly trying to do with her life to, at points, maybe turn it in a different direction. And I never got that side of things. It was always very one note in that sense, and I felt that, and that started to drag the movie down. And then we're approaching that 2 hour mark, and I'm sitting back going, we still have 45 minutes left. I didn't want to feel that. Unfortunately, I felt that, and it just didn't quite work for me from a filmmaking standpoint. And I know people are going to disagree. I shouldn't have to state this. It is all an opinion. It's just a review as an opinion, but you know that. If you're smart, you know that. Before I give you guys my score, I pose this question to you. Are you familiar with the source material? I personally would like to see a less fictionalized version of a Marilyn Monroe story, right? But that's not what this movie is. Regardless, what are your thoughts on this film? Ana de Armas is incredible, but the film is a bleak, fictional look into the life of Marilyn Monroe that never truly comes together. The technical elements are occasionally brilliant, but other choices fall completely flat, and the same can be said about the presentation. I genuinely appreciate the artistry behind this film, but some moments I just could not quite come to terms with in my head. I'm going a 53% with my score, almost right down the middle on the movie as a whole, but it all comes down to, what do you guys feel about this movie? Do you agree or disagree with me? Did this film work for you? Was it just too messy? Was it too long? At almost 3 hours? It is a bit lengthy. All right, guys, you're truly the best. Thanks for watching. I'll be back later today with another review, this time for The Woman King.